Staley versus Auriemma. A hateful rivalry is brewing between UConn and South Carolina, which was ignited after UConn's recent loss to South Carolina. Did Gino use coded language to disparage South Carolina? Or is Dawn Staley too sensitive and into her feelings? Let's take a deep dive as this has many layers. First, the history of this rivalry, which for years was UConn being the hammer and South Carolina being the nail. These two teams started playing in 2007 when UConn was crushing all comers. Staley was on the receiving end of one of the beatdowns in 2008 when she took over as Gamecocks coach. After a 6-year hiatus, the series resumed with UConn continuing to dominate as they had 8 consecutive wins against South Carolina. However, the tide turned in 2020 when South Carolina got their first win of the series, beating UConn 70-52 in Columbus, which coincided with the start of the Aaliyah Boston era as the freshmen controlled the game from the start by altering shots and grabbing 9 rebounds and 3 steals in the first quarter. Although UConn still leads the series 9-4, it's clear South Carolina has been the dominant program for the last 3 years. The tone of the series has also changed as well. In 2015, when the series resumed and UConn beat South Carolina by just over 20 points, Gino was very complimentary of South Carolina, saying, "They are going to be playing deep into the NCAA tournament. I told Dawn, I hope we play them in Tampa. That would be pretty special." However, after losing 3 out of 4 to South Carolina, including a loss in the NCAA championship game, Gino seemed to throw some passive-aggressive shade at the Gamecocks when discussing the toughness of UConn's schedule early in the season, saying, "There are no bad teams on our schedule. Maybe we could play a schedule that's 300th. But we don't do that, as our fans deserve better than that. So that's the price for who we are." Some saw this as a subtle jab at South Carolina for their weak schedule. But things really ignited during the latest game in February 23 at UConn, as Auriemma's frustration became obvious during the game as he threw a water bottle and was immediately teed up. In the post-game news conference, he conceded the technical was stupid, but said, "It's very, very difficult for some of our guys to move out on the floor. So I don't think it was one key play. I just couldn't keep quiet any longer," he said. "The technical was stupid. I didn't say anything for a long time. If you want to bring Lou in, and you can see the bruises on her body." Now this was referring to Lopez Seneschal, who he felt was being held off the ball. The money quote was really, "It's just appalling what teams do to her now. It's not basketball anymore. I don't know what it is, but it's not basketball." Now often this would be the end of it, as it would be classified as a frustrated coach, as it was the first time UConn had lost in back-to-back games in almost 30 years. But interestingly, Staley did not let it drop, and she fired back during her radio call-in show during the following week, saying she did not like the narrative that Auriemma had put on the game. That being, whenever South Carolina has success, they are called something other than what they are, which is a locked-in team which plays hellified defense and basketball the right way. She went on to point out that South Carolina had taken many a beating from UConn for years without any complaint, and that her star, Aaliyah Boston, gets manhandled in every game without complaining. Then Auriemma was asked about those comments, and he retorted not with an apology, but stated he'd been complaining about officials for years, and it's his right to complain without overtones. "If I'm never allowed to question an official without someone thinking I'm casting aspirations towards their team, that's just asinine. If you've been paying attention, I've been saying that for 20 years. And that's where it stands. If you're UConn, your team was getting mauled and your coach was simply standing up for his players, and there was not any overtones other than the officials stink and aren't calling the games correctly. If you are South Carolina, you feel that Gino is describing your team as thugs and shaping a narrative that's similar to that of Notre Dame versus Miami, that being Catholics versus convicts. Now the question is, where does this go from here? Is this the start of the fall of UConn? Or is South Carolina's rise and dominance just a result of Aaliyah Boston era, and will they fall back to just being a strong but not dominant team? Or will UConn strike back next year and reclaim their dominance with Beckers, Fudd, and Deschamps being healthy, mixed in with their new recruiting class, which is ranked number 4 in the nation? Or is the health of those 3 players a pipe dream, and is the guard changing? Will the epicenter of college basketball be in the SEC and be a 2-team race between South Carolina, who has the number 2 ranked recruiting class, and LSU, who appear to be a building power under Mulkey and have the number 1 recruiting class returning to complement Angel Reese and her dominance? It's hard to envision the Auriemma-Staley feud going away, and it seems reminiscent of Gino Auriemma and Pat Summitt. Back in the day, Summitt and Auriemma programs would square off yearly and was the biggest game on the college calendar. It started in 1995 as an upstart UConn was trying to take the belt from Tennessee. As UConn's dominance grew, the relationship between Gino and Pat Summitt grew more tense, which actually aided to the rivalry. However, in 2007, Summitt ended the series sick of the jives from Gino and also alluding to how she felt UConn was cheating in recruiting, which seemed to be fallout from UConn's successful recruiting of Maya Moore. This feud between Staley and Auriemma seems similar in the sense that, like UConn at the time, South Carolina is on the rise, and there's no way Auriemma is going to walk nicely into that dying light. He will be kicking and screaming and verbally abrasive. Can you see him really letting this issue drop if he feels like it's getting under Staley's skin? The only way I could see it going away is if he feels like it's hurting his recruiting. Listen to this.
If you have a child, a daughter with melanin, and you send her to UConn, you need your head examined. If you have a child with melanin, male or I'm gonna go out, male or female, men or woman, playing basketball or any sport for that matter, and you're sending them to UConn, particularly to play for Gino Auriemma, you need your head examined, or you don't really care about your child's development as a Black woman.
The rivalry between Tennessee and UConn was great, as it was just good old-fashioned hate and generated passion, whether it was Tennessee wanting to warm up on UConn's side of the court, or Gino saying he wouldn't want to be picked up by Pat Summitt even if he had a broken-down car on the side of the road late at night. The question with Auriemma and Staley is how far will this go, because it has the potential to get really nasty. It's probably in their best interest for both of them to let it go, as Auriemma has the potential to be depicted as the old white coach talking in code, and Staley getting the John Thompson treatment, who got the Hoya paranoia label. It's not beyond the realm that Staley pulls out of this series. Earlier this year, she canceled the game against BYU. She did this following racial slur allegations from a Duke volleyball player against BYU. It wouldn't be surprising if she called off the series against UConn if she felt it was helping to form an opinion that her players were thugs and that basketball was being played by her team the wrong way. Anyway, my hope is that somehow, some way, these two teams face off in the tournament, as it would just seem fitting and obviously what people want to see if you look at the previous ratings. Hopefully it just is a respectful game that plays straight out. But what do you think in terms of the back and forth between Staley and Auriemma? Is Gino using code, and is Staley understandably upset by this? Or is Staley too sensitive? Is a power change happening in women's basketball, and will the epicenter of basketball continue to be the SEC like football? Please leave respectful comments regarding the team and coaches below. Anything that crosses the line will be removed. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.